Leamons! Welcome back to another video of mine. So, I've made a few videos looking back at old cringy art of mine, and so many of you guys asked me to redraw the old art. I've been pretty busy recently, so it did take me a bit longer than I would have liked, although I have finally redrawn some of my older drawings from those videos. And in this video, I'll show the artworks in speed paints and talk about my process and decisions, while also pointing out what was done wrong in the original drawings, and how I tried to fix and improve them. Anyway, with that all said, let's get right into the video. So, for the first drawing, I chose to redraw the bunny character of mine that I used in the thumbnail of that video. This was one of my very first drawings, so my art skills weren't that great. You can tell that I didn't have much experience with my line art, as it looks very shaky. And I tried to make my line art match whatever her colors were, but it just looks messy in some areas, such as on her chest fur. I also drew her ears coming out frontwards, which just looks odd. Her pink ear insides should be at her side instead. Her tail is also way too huge for her body. Plus, the shading is terrible, and I drew shaded dots all over her body for whatever random reason that was. Now that I've talked about my issues with the first piece, I'll discuss how my process went with the redraw. With these redraws, I've tried to make them look as much like the original as possible. That's just more of a true redraw, in my opinion. But of course, there were some things I had to change, and obviously my current style is different, so it makes me draw a tad differently too. This bunny character is actually based on those really lanky, tall bunnies. I kind of forget what they're called at the moment, so I wanted to make her look taller in this drawing. I also had to stay true to the original piece and draw her with the DreamWorks face. I made her tail smaller since it looked weird in the original drawing with how big it was. I also changed her ears quite a bit. I made them smaller and less long. I sort of hate the fact that I drew her without any clothing in the original drawing. It's because I wouldn't have known how to draw clothing back then. Drawing furs without clothing was just easier for me. But now with my current style I draw in, I couldn't help but feel slightly uncomfortable with her not wearing any clothes. But I didn't want to change too much with the drawing either, so I just didn't draw any clothes on her. She at least has her pink fluff on her chest, so I'm grateful for that. I tweaked some minor things like her hands and how they're positioned. I also did change how far apart her legs were. In the original drawing, I had them sort of like how actual fursuits are, but my style, at least for furry anatomy, is not like that anymore. So I just had to draw them in a different way. Obviously, I shaded more neatly and gave small light detail where it was appropriate. And finally, I gave the drawings the same pink background with the same darker pink circle, and that's it. That's the redraw for my old bunny character. So, for the second drawing, I chose to redraw the drawing I did of Emmy wearing a shirt and socks. This drawing was also a more early on drawing of mine, but you can still tell it's a bit better than the bunny one. The line art was still sort of messy in areas. Same goes for the shading. Some of the bigger issues for this drawing was the fact that I drew fur on her clothing. Like, her shirt should not have fur. I don't know what I was thinking. It also just curves around her body in such an unnatural way. It is pretty bad. I drew these weird, strangly furs all over her body, and it's really weird looking. And I haven't even mentioned how I butchered the ears. If you couldn't tell, her ears are meant to be floppy dog ears, but instead, I drew the ears coming out at the right side of her head when she's in a straight-on pose. I really don't know how I messed that up so bad, but I did. And that's why we're fixing these. So, now that I've talked about the issues with the second piece, I'll discuss how my process went with the redraw. Again, like I've mentioned already, I tried my best to keep the redraw as close to the original as possible. Emmy is a character of mine I've had for years now. In fact, she's one of my very first characters I've created, and has changed a lot since I first made her. First and foremost, I made sure to draw her wearing a shirt with no fur, but I'm pretty sure it was clear that I was going to do that. I gave her shirt more depth, instead of just curving it around her body in an awkward manner. I also drew her socks to curve naturally on her legs for the way I had her standing. I fixed some smaller things like the way her arm and paws were positioned, just to make it look nicer. as in the original her arms looked too rounded and not like actual arms. Her tail isn't as poofy and wild as it used to be in the original drawing, so instead she has a scruffy dog tail. And of course, I made sure her ears looked normal and not kiltered to one side of her head. It actually took me a bit to figure out how exactly I wanted her ears to look, but in the end, I'm happy with what I came up with. I gave her some neater shading and gave small lighting details where I felt it was needed. Lastly, I went with a blue background instead of the pink one in the original drawing. This was because the pink background was the exact same color as her shirt, and in my opinion, that clashed a bit much. But all in all, this is the redraw of Emmy. So, for the third drawing, I chose to redraw the mouse character of mine that I used in the second video's thumbnail. Obviously, that drawing caught a lot of attention, considering how many views the video got. It's a very bad drawing, and I hate it. A lot. But at the same time, hating it was the reason I needed to redraw it. Like, I had to remake it, to make myself feel better. The original drawing had my mouse character in such an unnatural, weird pose. It just doesn't even look possible to sit the way she is. She wouldn't be able to support her body weight without having one of her arms down on the ground. Her face is at a 3/4 and side angle at the same time, which looks terrible. Plus, her hoodie just appears out of nowhere, making it look odder. I also drew her tail on her leg, so that's an issue. There is quite honestly so much wrong with this drawing. Even though the line art is better than the last few drawings, it is still far worse for just how I drew the anatomy. This was definitely a challenge to redraw, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't even feel 100% with the redraw that I came out with. But it's definitely better than the original, and I know that this was a weird pose to redraw. Anyway, I'll discuss the process for the redraw. So it took me a long time to figure out how I wanted to pose this character. I actually did try to pose it like it was in the original, the best I could, but every time I did, it looked painfully bad and unnatural. That was the problem for me. I couldn't make this pose look normal. So for this redraw, I did decide to change the pose a bit. Hopefully that's okay. I decided to give her face a 3/4 angle as she looks back. As in the original drawing, I did both at the same time and that looked bad. I also made sure the ears actually looked like mouse ears instead of lion ears like a lot of you assumed they were. I put one of her arms down on the ground to support her body weight to help the pose look more natural. The other arm I decided to leave up in the air, just like how she had it in the last pose. I changed her sweater a bit, as the pastel yellow and pink colors clashed so much when I tried using them together. I don't know why, as pink and yellow can look great together, but I just wasn't happy with them in this drawing, so I left her sweater pink. I also decided to add pants on her. I felt weird leaving her pantless in this kind of a pose. I think y'all can understand. I added some shading and gave lighting where it was needed, and I used the pastel blue background from the original drawing for this one, and that's the end of the redraw. That's actually the end of this video too. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me try and redraw these old, terrible drawings of mine. It was definitely an experience for me to try and fix and improve these older drawings. Some were easier and some were more difficult, but all in all, I'm so glad I did this. And let me know in the comment section what you think about the redraws I made. If you guys like this video, I'll consider making a part 2 of redrawing old artwork from these cringe review videos. I'm sorry it took me so long to make a video. I've been so busy with my life recently, I genuinely had no time to work on videos, and in the process, I forgot about making them. And I don't know how it's been a whole month since I haven't made a video, as that's super unlike me. The most I normally go without a video is like 2 weeks maybe. So I really hope I get back into making videos soon, as I really do love YouTube. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. It's been Leamon Puppy. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all next time.